US President Donald Trump is keen on a deal. In fact, he just gave an interview a short while back where he said that the United States is in a very strong negotiating position and it will end up with a great deal with Iran. Now, he's been saying similar things for a while now. Remember, on Monday, he had put up a message on social media which started with how his new Iran deal will be much better than the JCPOA or the Iran nuclear deal, which was signed by former President Barack Obama. But if talks or a ceasefire extension aren't confirmed, that implies that this war will resume. Donald Trump seems to be preparing the U.S. for that possibility as well. During this interview, he said that he does not want to extend the ceasefire and that America is ready to go in militarily. He's also put up this short message on social media where he's accused Iran of having already violated the ceasefire numerous times. On the other side, Iran's Chief Justice has accused the U.S. of the very same thing.
It is possible that our negotiations may genuinely lead nowhere and that it will be necessary for us to carry out those actions again. They themselves violated the ceasefire, and Iran will certainly respond. This very maritime blockade they are talking about is, without doubt, a clear violation of the ceasefire.
The Iran state broadcaster, the IRIB, has consistently been saying that Iran has not agreed to the talks yet. And it recently announced that no Iranian delegation has traveled to Pakistan so far. In fact, it also stressed that neither a primary nor a secondary team has gone to Pakistan yet for any sort of mission. After some initial confusion, the U.S. announced that Vice President J.D. Vance would lead the American delegation again. In fact, Vance, along with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, are expected to head to Islamabad for talks with Iran. But whether they leave before Iran confirms its participation is still in doubt. Islamabad, meanwhile, has been ready to welcome both the parties again. Pakistan's capital has been locked down. Security has been deployed everywhere. The Serena Hotel, where the first round of talks took place, has been made ready to welcome the delegations once more. The only question that remains is, will they really arrive? And it isn't just Pakistan that is anxiously awaiting a confirmation of these talks.
Hearing now contradicting reports in the media. We are following very closely. We are quite concerned and we're supportive of all the efforts of Pakistan, but I'll leave it at that. Obviously, if a deal is not reached, Qatar supports the current condition of the ceasefire, and we are aiming to see a continuation of the ceasefire until there is a diplomatic resolution. It is not in anyone's benefit to return to hostilities.
Gulf nations hosting American military assets were bombarded by Iran throughout this war. A peace deal is in their interest as well, because if it doesn't materialize, then they could be in the crosshairs once again. All right, let me welcome my guests on the show. Jason D. Greenblatt is a former White House Special Envoy to West Asia. He's joining us live on the broadcast from New Jersey. In fact, remember, Jason was a key player in building the foundation for the Abraham Accords. He's also written the book In the Path of Abraham, which focuses on Donald Trump's West Asian policy as well as the Abraham Accords. Jason, good evening. Welcome to WION. Can I start by asking you, since you're somebody who's been involved in American foreign policy vis-a-vis West Asia, Iran has been denying that they will not participate in these talks. Do you see that as a truthful, genuine statement, or do you see that as another tactic by Iran to sort of display that they're not taking part in American talks, but eventually they'll end up in Islamabad?
Well, thanks for having me. I think it's both a tactic, but also a sign that there's still infighting within the Iranian regime. There are some who want to make a deal. Whether that deal will be good or not, I'm not sure. But there are some who want to travel there and try to make a deal. And there are others who are saying no talks. And I think that would be a very foolish mistake, because President Trump has been clear that he could do this the easy way and the hard way. The easy way is making a diplomatic deal. The hard way, of course, is returning to war.
Jason, a short while back, Donald Trump gave the interview to a news channel where he said that the Iranian ship that the American forces had captured had, quote, a Chinese gift on it. You've got the Iranian authorities saying that they are ready with new cards to bring into the battlefield. Should and would the Trump administration and the United States be concerned about these statements?
Possibly, yes. I don't know what the gift is. I've heard the reference to it, but we're all guessing what that is. I think the Iranians have always touted their military prowess, and look, they've managed to amass quite a missile and drone army. They've caused some damage and destruction, but so far we haven't seen anything that has been terribly dramatic. I think the U.S. military combined with the Israeli military has done a remarkable job in pushing back the Iranian military capabilities. However, there's still a lot of work to do.
Jason, since you've been closely working with the Trump administration since the first presidency, I want to understand from you what you think of Donald Trump's strategy towards West Asia. Many believe that this is just an erratic approach that the U.S. president is deploying to deal with the West Asian, countries. There's also another set that believes that, look, this is a very well thought out pressure tactic that Donald Trump is applying, and he will reap the benefits of it.
Right. Not only do I believe it's well thought out, I think it's consistent with all of his public messaging since even before he became president the first time. He was very much against the JCPOA. He called it, in different formats, a very stupid deal, promised to rip it up, did actually rip it up. Remember, he's somebody who grew up at the time that Americans were held hostage in Tehran by this regime. And he understands that the Iranian regime is an enemy not only to our Gulf Arab allies and Israel and West Asia broadly, but to America and, of course, even to Europe. The Iranians have created a missile that reportedly could actually reach Europe. So he understands the threat, and that's why he is trying to take care of it. He's, I think, the first president who's much more about actions rather than just words.
Jason, if this is a well thought out strategy, how would you then explain the fact that many believe that there has been no concrete regime change in Iran? One of the first aims that the Trump administration had said when it waged this war against Iran, because executions are still taking place within Iran. There is still the Iranian authorities that are playing their own kind of pressure tactics on America. So what has Donald Trump achieved if this was a well thought out strategy?
I don't think regime change was at the top of the list ever. I think regime change is certainly desired, especially for the Iranian people who've suffered terribly under this regime. But I don't think it was the ultimate goal if it couldn't be achieved. And I think regime change is extremely difficult in a case like this. I think the real goals were, of course, the nuclear threat, the missile and the drone threat, and then once the war started, of course, now the Strait of Hormuz closure.
Quickly, before I let you go, Jason, the Abraham Accords, you're somebody who's been, deeply involved in setting the foundation of the Abraham Accords during the first presidency of Trump. When it comes to Israel, Donald Trump has said that it's not Prime Minister Netanyahu who has pressured me into it. This is my own decision. Do you think Israel now intervening in these peace negotiations and having some sort of say in them would have an impact at all?
Well, President Trump makes his own decisions. He does what's best for America. Of course, he takes into account things that are important for our allies, not just Israel, but our Gulf Arab allies who have been hammered, in particular in the UAE, who have been hammered by the Iranian regime. I think each of them should have a voice in President Trump's ear in terms of their concerns. But ultimately, President Trump is going to make his decision based on what's best for the United States.
All right, I'll leave it there. Jason Greenblatt, thanks very much for joining us on WION for this special conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right, with that, let's shift our focus now to Iraq as well, where the country finds itself caught in the middle of the American war on Iran. The country shares religious and cultural ties and, remember, a large border with Iran. But the Iraqi government also shares friendly relations with the United States, and therefore, both America and Iran are now engaging in tactics to ensure that the government in Baghdad remains friendly. The appointment of Iraq's prime minister is testing the critical balance that Baghdad seeks to maintain in its relations with Washington and Tehran. Even 5 months after parliamentary polls, remember, Iraq's Shia political parties have failed to elect a consensus candidate for the post of the Prime Minister. The incumbent Prime Minister, Mohammad Shia al-Sudani, is eyeing a second term, but he's facing a challenge from the bloc led by former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. Iran's Quds Force chief, Ismail Qani, reportedly visited Baghdad to break the deadlock. Qani met with various stakeholders, including al-Maliki, al-Sudani, and even the chief of staff of the Popular Mobilization Forces militant group. But despite Qani's visit, infighting and disagreements over the next Iraqi prime minister continue. The United States has openly warned Iraq against appointing the pro-Iran Nouri al-Maliki. But Iran wields significant influence over political and armed groups within Iraq. The PMF, remember, is part of Iran's so-called Axis of Resistance, which is the network of the armed groups spread across West Asia. Under Iraq's constitution, lawmakers will have to name the next prime minister before the 26th of April. The power in Iraq is divided between the 3 largest ethnic and religious groups, which are the Shia, the Sunnis, and the Kurds. A power-sharing agreement implemented after the death of Saddam Hussein reserves major positions for these 3 communities. The post of the Prime Minister, remember, is reserved for the Shia community. Iraq's president must be Kurdish, and the Sunni community, which is spread across the scarcely populated western Iraq, gets the position of the parliament speaker. The leaders of Iraq's Shia political faction, the Coordination Framework, are holding daily meetings. The Secretary General of this umbrella group says that the name of the Prime Minister is expected to be finalized on the 22nd of April. Campaigning for the first phase of the West Bengal Assembly elections has now ended. The state has entered the 48-hour silence period now ahead of polling this Thursday. In the first phase of elections, remember, 152 constituencies across 16 districts will go to vote. According to the official figures, there are over 36 million voters, and of these, 18.4 million are male voters, 17.5 million are female, and 465 are third gender voters. The Election Commission of India has stepped up security arrangements across the state ahead of the polling. More than 8,000 booths have been identified as super sensitive. To ensure free, fair and peaceful polling, central forces have been deployed along with surveillance teams and quick response units. Strict monitoring has been ordered in border areas, with some zones sealed to prevent untoward incidents. Authorities say these measures are essential to maintain law and order during the voting process. Meanwhile, leaders from all major parties have been holding rallies across the state, aiming to sway the undecided voters before the mandated period of silence. This was all through the day today till 5 p.m. Among the key contenders is Bharatiya Janata Party's Shubhendu Adhikari, who's the leader of opposition. He's thrown a big challenge to the incumbent Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. He's being pitted against Pabitra Kaur, a long-time associate who recently joined the Trinamool Congress in Nandigram. Next up is former 2-time MLA from Murshidabad, Shawnee Singha Roy. She's returning to the fray on a TMC ticket after narrowly losing to BJP's Gauri Shankar Ghosh back in 2021. Dilip Ghosh is a senior BJP leader and the former state president. He's there as well fighting this election. He's been a prominent face of the party's expansion in West Bengal. He's contesting from Kharagpur Sadar. Veteran Congress leader Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary is making a comeback after 25 long years to assembly politics. This is seen as a crucial move, remember, to revive the Congress party, particularly in Murshidabad. He faces BJP MLA Shubrata Moitra, who is seeking a second term from the Behrampur Assembly constituency in Murshidabad district. While phase 1 takes place this Thursday, remember the remaining 142 seats will go to polls on the 29th of April, and the fate of the 294-member assembly will be sealed on the 4th of May when the counting gets underway. All right, let me go across to our correspondent Dharamjot Kaur. She's joining us live from Malda in West Bengal. She's been tracking all the ground developments ahead of phase 1 of the elections. Dharamjot, all eyes now, of course, are on the first phase of voting. This is the 48-hour period of silence that we're looking at. Get us the general sentiment among people. The place where you are is a crucial border district. It has had major security concerns in the past as far as illegal immigration is concerned. Now, of course, employment and, employment, of course, and education is also one of the key sectors that people want their issues to be resolved in.
Well, absolutely, Shreya. But coming to the question of security first, there are close to 240,000 security personnel that have been deployed across all the assembly constituencies where elections, the first phase, will be held on Thursday. Just to give you a sense of even where I am, I'm standing at one of the busiest crossings in Malda in the English Bazaar constituency right now. I was here yesterday as well. We're seeing probably a third of movement as compared to the past few days, which means a lot less people are stepping out now as the countdown begins to voting day. There's also more police present consistently ever since all the rallies ended at 5 p.m. It's been 3 hours since then. We're officially in the silent period, and there's a lot more security presence at all the crossings across Malda. And I'm sure that's true for other districts as well, because there's several of them which the Election Commission had identified as sensitive, especially certain polling booths, to ensure that the entire process goes very smoothly. So very high security. Of course, there's an undercurrent in terms of who's going to win this election and what the voters are really thinking. As you rightly mentioned, there are a lot of undecided voters. Interestingly, Shreya, there are also a lot of voters who do not want to openly talk about which party they're supporting. They're focused on the issues, and they're fairly mum in terms of which side they are keen on taking, because there's so many people and locals over here who want to avoid any sort of confrontation and conflict with each other. And so that, in essence, gives you a sense of how high octane this entire election campaign season in West Bengal has been. In terms of the issues, as you rightly mentioned, there is a myriad of them that the voters want covered, from employment to also investment that will generate more jobs. And this is true for both the rural and the urban population. One key concern that a lot of people have is a lot of youth from West Bengal is moving out of the state for better opportunities, and they want that to change in the future. Which party and which government that comes up can do that? That's the big question, but we'll find out on May the 4th, Shreya.
That's right. As far as the big electoral fights are concerned, Dharamjot, you've got some interesting battles coming up, whether it's Shubhendu Adhikari versus Mamata Banerjee or Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary making a comeback in assembly politics. Is really interesting how this electoral battle will pan out, of course, between phase 1 and phase 2. But how are the people looking at it? Because there's the incumbent Trinamool Congress, then you've got the BJP making some tall promises as well, and the Congress and the left trying to make a comeback and trying to sort of get deeply into the seats, the constituencies across West Bengal.
Well, there's a bit of a split verdict in terms of what people are saying. There are many who do want to see change in governance. It's been 3 terms that Mamata Banerjee has been serving as West Bengal's chief minister, and that's about 15 years of time that we're talking about here. So there are many who are seeking some sort of change in governance to see what kind of difference that does a different party make in terms of policies for the state. But there are many voters who are also satisfied with the incumbent authorities that are in place. They want the status quo to remain unchanged. There are also several who will be voting for other parties. We're looking at the Congress and the left front also though they do not end up winning a lot of assembly constituencies, they do end up making a dent in terms of the vote share that they end up cutting into. Whose vote share will they cut into in terms of the BJP or the TMC in this bipolar contest that's happening in West Bengal? I think that's going to be very interesting to watch out for, Shreya.
Absolutely. Dharamjot, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us with the Ground Report from West Bengal. All right, with that, let's talk about how the political row has erupted amid the last day of campaigning in Tamil Nadu. Remember, before the state goes to polls on Thursday this week, the firestorm was sparked by Mallikarjun Kharge, the president of the Indian National Congress Party and the leader of the opposition in the upper house of the parliament, the Rajya Sabha. Here's what Kharge said. Kharge called the Prime Minister a terrorist today.
How can they join with Modi, who is a terrorist?
Now, he can clearly be heard calling the Prime Minister a terrorist. He was criticizing the AIADMK for joining hands with the Bharatiya Janata Party when this slip took place. Later, Mallikarjun Kharge tried some damage control as well. Take a listen.
Just I wanted to clarify that Modi always threatens and always is, I told certain sequence, ID, ED, income tax, CVC, these institutions are in his hand. Again, this delimitation also he wants to take in his hand. Therefore, I say, in that context,
Terrorize, you mean to say?
he is terrorizing people and political parties.
So Mallikarjun Kharge tried to justify his remark. He said that he meant that Prime Minister Modi terrorizes people and that he didn't mean that the Prime Minister was a terrorist in the traditional sense. However, despite his attempt to sweep the matter under the carpet, the Bharatiya Janata Party has now latched on to this comment. Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal put out a social media post criticizing the Congress and its senior ally in Tamil Nadu, the DMK. Piyush Goyal said that both Rahul Gandhi and MK Stalin must apologize for this insult. The West African nation of Benin is preparing an extradition request for an influencer who expressed support for the coup attempt in December. The country seeks the return of the activist Kemi Seba. Now remember, Seba is currently in South Africa. He was arrested on the 13th of April along with his 18-year-old son. South African authorities picked them up as they were trying to cross into Zimbabwe. Pretoria has detained him for breaching immigration laws. Benin had issued an international warrant for Seba on the 12th of December. This was just after the failed coup attempt on the 7th of December when some Beninese soldiers had come on television and declared that they had overthrown President Patrice Talon. At the time, Seba had welcomed the coup. In fact, he had put out a video as well declaring that it was the day of liberation for Benin. But the coup failed and Seba fled the country. And now Benin wants him back. Seba has about 1.5 million followers on social media. He's been a prominent critic of the West, especially of France and its role in West Africa. Seba has also been accused of spouting Russian propaganda. He was actually born in France, but he was stripped of his French nationality in 2024 after being sentenced for incitement to racial hatred. When he was arrested in South Africa earlier this month, he was carrying a diplomatic passport from Niger, which recently saw a successful coup and which has also seen a rise in anti-France sentiment. South African prosecutors are currently verifying the authenticity of Seba's Niger passport. Meanwhile, the activist has applied for an asylum in South Africa. Will Pretoria grant him an asylum, or will he be returned to Benin to face prosecution? That is the big question. Right, with that, it's a wrap in this edition of Race to Power, but we will keep getting you news and analysis from India and across the world. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia